Hello guys, it's Tony here, and today I've got the pleasure meeting people behind the ZK Capital who created recently the report about NEM platform. Can you guys tell a little bit about yourselves? What are you doing in the cryptosphere, and a little bit about yourselves?
Yeah, so my name is Imran. I am one of the partners at ZK Capital. And ZK Capital is essentially a blockchain investment fund that it's focused really on bringing information to the community. We feel that there isn't enough information in the community where investors can make the right choices when they make investments. And we feel that a lot of the investments that people are making today are really focused on projects that do not have a lack of, or they don't have, developers, or it's a project that you see that's more focused on marketing, or it could be any of those reasons. And what we do here is really try to focus on not only helping our portfolio company scale, but bringing out the right information for the public. So that's one of the reasons why we started ZK Capital. And really, we have 6 individuals on our team. Myself, I previously worked at Microsoft. And now I work here at ZK Capital. We have Ehab on the line. He has done, if you want to do a quick 1-minute intro about yourself, Ehab.
Sure. So my name is Ehab. I'm a PhD candidate working in the cybersecurity lab at Michigan State University. My research in the lab is split into 2 main objectives. I'm doing research by utilizing applied cryptography to develop hierarchical data sharing schemes. The second objective is that I'm actually investigating, exploring the security and privacy issues in the blockchain space, and we're investigating potential attacks and flaws in the blockchain as well.
Huda?
Yeah, hey, I'm Mohammed. I'm Mohammed Kudam. I'm a PhD candidate at Northwestern University in Chicago. And I'm doing also my PhD in electrical engineering. I have also done my master's in Egypt, and I'm mainly focused about the technical aspects of blockchain projects. I have quite a big experience in hardware. So I started as a hardware fan, studying FPGAs, ASICs, and that stuff. And then when I got interested in the blockchain technology, I started reading and researching about Bitcoin, Ethereum, all the other projects. And then I'm one of the founders of ZK Capital. So in ZK Capital, I'm mainly focused on analyzing economic incentives of blockchain projects, evaluating how they work, evaluating their success trajectories. So that's my background so far.
And we have two other individuals on the team that didn't come to this interview, but one, his name is Raul, and the other is Mohammed Kastawi. And their focus is really around the business and bringing in the developer mindset for our group.
And there's also Saidi, Saidi.
Okay.
And focus is really around big data, artificial intelligence, and distributed systems.
Okay, thank you for answers. So we are making this interview because you guys made a report about NEM, and it was, as far as I know, the first report in this kind that you made. Very thorough, very detailed. So why have you chosen NEM as the first platform to create a report about? What was behind the thinking of choosing NEM as the first one?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. We feel that we looked through all the coins on the top 15 coin market cap, and we felt that there wasn't enough information about NEM. NEM has been around since 2015, almost 2014, if you think about when they started the group. And we feel that by bringing in more information to the NEM community and everyone else, I think people can make the right choices, right? NEM has a pretty strong crypto community background. So we felt like by giving it an in-depth analysis around NEM itself, it would not only just help the community out, but it can also help the NEM community out as well.
Yes. Okay, so another question. I will go into more technical ones because your report is very technical, very thorough, and I would like to start from pointing out that I am in NEM for about a year now. I'm a developer as well. I'm contacting a lot of core developers, asking them questions. So maybe sometimes my insight may be a little bit bigger, and also I'm using this platform like on everyday basis. So I don't want to tell you guys that your report wasn't good. I mean, I read it. I felt that it was very good report for like 40-page report that you made. Of course, I think there were some small issues. Of course, it's hard to not make those small amendments. For example, if you are creating so extensive report, and also our community grilled you about it very hard. I don't think that's a big issue, because as I said, it's a big report. So right now I've got some more technical questions, and I also asked some developers about that. So later on we can off the screen can talk a little bit more about that. But for now, just a few questions. So please tell me why do you think that the proof of importance algorithm is less secure than proof of stake? Because some data that you made this report about probably was outdated, so maybe you found it in that way. But for example, I asked the developers, and the importance score is only like 10% on top of the proof of stake. So it's not changing the algorithm so much as it was shown on, for example, some kind of charts that you guys made. So can you give me a little bit more insight why you think the proof of importance may be a security vulnerability?
Sure, I can start by saying that first of all, like any scheme or protocol has its pros and cons, right? But what it really boils down to here when we're comparing proof of importance, proof of stake, or proof of work to each other is whether it's more deterministic or more probabilistic, right? And what that means is when something is more deterministic, it's obviously based on certain calculations that are predefined by the system. Whereas when we're thinking of something that's more probabilistic, we're thinking of something that's based on probability. And what I'm trying to say here is that proof of importance or proof of stake are leaning more towards the deterministic protocols, because, for example, in proof of importance, the system is based on an importance score, which is based on certain variables in the system. So whether how much you have vested or how many transactions you've performed in a certain period of time. For proof of stake, you can also think of it how much stake you have over a certain period of time as well. But when you compare that in contrast to proof of work, which is more based on probability, because we're looking for a solution to a hard problem, which is the nonce, right? And whether you have high computation, obviously when you have like more computational power, you have a better chance, but that does not eliminate someone with a low chance from being lucky, right? Yeah, so what it really boils down, I'm sorry?
Yeah, but I think it's very similar to the proof of stake in the same,
right. So like I said,
yeah.
Right. Like I said, everything has its pros and cons, but it's whether you can look at it from like whether it's leaning more towards a deterministic protocol or a probabilistic protocol. When it's something that's deterministic, in the end, it should be more liable to security attacks.
Okay, I can add something here. If you are really speaking about the difference between proof of importance and proof of stake, that's actually the main modification that NEM proposed, like as a way to like incentivize users to use the network more. So we found we assigned some part of the report to specifically study that, and we found that by introducing this kind of modification, you have actually introduced the ability of someone to pretend to be as different number of users or a larger number of users, which is known as cyber attack. So this modification, whether it's small or not, has started to favor small players, small users who have a small account or a small amount of tokens. And this kind of favorability may incline some users who have a larger stake to split their account into smaller accounts, and by using the favorability of the system, the combined importance score they will have will be larger than the case if they hold only one account with a big balance. So, and for that, we decided not to use our simulations, to not go into like arguments about the accuracy of our simulations or something like that, but we decided to use the reported simulation that was actually in the technical reference. And using this kind of simulations, we drove our point and we clarified our point that the system, by the current design that was reported in the technical design, makes some favorability for smaller account balances. And this actually was discussed in detail. So I encourage anyone who wants to discuss that to read our analysis, and we are very open to the discussion. So there is some minimum importance score that is guaranteed for anyone with whatever amount of token he has. So this kind of minimum encourages other actors to game the system, and this kind of a gaming is not existent of proof of stake. It's only limited to proof of importance. And from my opinion, I think other protocols and other developers have acknowledged that part, and that's why no other protocol so far, from maybe more than 2,000 projects, no other project is using proof of importance. It's only NEM. I think that fact boils down to the fact that these developers have acknowledged that proof of importance allows for a cyber attack vector, and they decided to stick to proof of stake instead of trying to modify the consensus algorithm.
Yeah, it makes sense, but also with proof of importance, we also got another mechanisms on top of it, like we've got, for example, vesting mechanism. So splitting amounts into different accounts will hurt the person who is splitting them, because this person needs to wait another period of time to vest all of these accounts on the singular account. So I think that would also make this a little bit less economical, being less.
I don't think that's like a big deal, because according to the consensus protocols now, like 10% of the unvested balance turns into vested account, right? So for 90% of the balance to be turned into vested, this requires about 20 days.
Yeah.
So if someone recognizes the attack vector, it will be like 20 days until he gets the full benefit of the gaming, and he doesn't need to change it anymore. He does it once, and he gains the advantage, and that's it. So 20 days to gain like maybe 20%, 30% advantage in the importance score is worth it. That's my point. So saying that the vesting period will solve this problem, for my opinion, is not correct. It's not a valid reason. It's not a valid justification, because it can be gamed once, and the guy who gamed the system doesn't need to change anything after that.
And adding to that, again, the more variables you include that make the system more deterministic. So if you increase the period of time, or the variables, or the amount that you need to vest, again, all these factors actually help someone to game the system, not actually protect it, because they can actually predict who can control what at a certain period of time. It's not going to be obviously very accurate, but there is like a high level of prediction that can result in gaming the system in the end.
Okay, so I will let this topic open for now, and let's move to another topics. You stated the lack of privacy, and stated in the report that this is a big problem, of one of the problems of NEM. So can you explain a little bit more about why is it a problem? So starting from the regulations, we see NEM is super popular in Japan, for example, and right now we see the privacy coins being pushed off the exchanges back there in Japan. So when we are talking about some kind of big scale adoption, I think it's a good way to not have the privacy coin at this point of time. For example, if Bitcoin would be a privacy coin, then it may had some problems on the exchanges back there in Japan, even that it's a big cryptocurrency. So NEM is super clear cryptocurrency, and its main goal is to like blockchainize small to medium businesses, to give ability to blockchainize small to medium businesses. And I think it's very good in terms of the regulations that NEM is not a privacy coin, so you can easily track it, except some small part of the system where basically you can send your coins to the exchange, which will act like a mixer, because on NEM most of the exchanges keep all the ZEMs in one big account, and until we can like look into those accounts and see inputs and outputs, then we can treat it basically like a black box, which can anonymize those coins pretty well, which not happen on other blockchains because they are not operating on the same systems in terms of exchanges. So what do you guys think about that?
Let me first start by talking about most of the exchanges today, right? So here, like for example, in the U.S., in order to join an exchange and start exchanging over it, you need to verify your account, and I'm pretty sure that's like in most of the exchanges that most of the people use today, or the ones that at least people trust. And how the way you verify your account is either you upload a photo of your driver's license, a photo of your passport, and in some cases you actually have to insert your social security number, right? So again, this boils down to something called as the linkage problem. And if we were to discuss what the linkage problem is being able to link certain transactions to certain identities. And once you can identify a certain user in the system, then you can immediately identify when, who, or why he has transacted through the exchange server, for example. And that becomes a centralized source of privacy leakage. So if we were to discuss your question about do mixers provide privacy to the users, we can argue here that no, because the servers actually know the identities of these users very well, and they can actually track them. And here we're just talking about a very high level of privacy. Malicious attackers can actually go and look at the peer-to-peer network where they can actually observe the motion of transactions from one node to another. And if they are able to identify a certain identity due to any auxiliary information, which is available all over the internet, or even use like high computational power resources or artificial intelligence or neural networks, they can still, to some extent, predict who has been transacting what transactions, and they can easily track how transactions are moving over the network. Another point we should discuss is the traffic. When the traffic is low, and we can see that the traffic is not too high, you can actually do this in a manual way. So it wouldn't even exhaust like a lot of computational effort to sit here and track how or where transactions are moving from one place to another. Again, we have seen systems that are appearing today that are trying to provide anonymity, privacy protocols, built-in protocols, and this space obviously is requesting that because yes, there is a trade-off between regulations and privacy. In order to succeed within governments and big entities, they want to fight privacy, but from a user perspective, or particularly enterprises perspective, they want all the privacy they can get, because for competitive reasons, obviously any enterprise that will adopt a system like this wants to hide or keep all their transactions private from other enterprises because they're competing with them, right? So it's always going to be a trade-off. That's how we see it. But it always boils down to whether these protocols are available to provide the anonymity or not. In terms of regulation, maybe Fuda can add a few points.
Yeah, for regulation, yeah, I understand that so far many governments were like very skeptic about anonymous coins or like privacy coins, but actually this is kind of changing right now. Like many countries, and especially in Europe, are changing privacy laws and they are accepting that users have their privacy protected. They are changing the laws to prevent companies from selling users' information. And this that means that governments are moving in the direction of allowing more privacy for the users. So, and this actually have manifested later by listing on some privacy coins on major exchanges in the US without naming any project. But like the direction toward accepting privacy coins is moving, is progressing, and many coins will require strict privacy features. And as Ihab mentioned, merchants and people who will use a blockchain for business are not willing to expose all their transactional information to the public. If you are a merchant that doing business on the blockchain, you don't want your competitors to see your clients or identify your clients. You don't want your competitors to know how much business you are doing. Using a privacy coin as a merchant, you will keep track of that, because as a merchant, even if you are using privacy coin, you still can have records of all your transactions and provide them to the government if you want, if the government is running an audit or anything on you. But having this kind of information public on the blockchain is not a good feature. Is not a good feature or a good like something good about doing business on the blockchain. That's why many projects are suffering to get merchant and enterprise adoption, because no one wants to keep everything. No one wants to keep their information public to anyone, especially competitors. So having built-in privacy features is something that is everyone is moving toward. And honestly, I think many projects, even Bitcoin and Ethereum and the big projects, will try in the future to include privacy in some form or the other, either in confidential transactions or like anonymizing the sender and receiver IDs, so something like that.
Can I follow up with another question regarding this thing? Because NEM, as we know, is closely connected to its private chains, permissioned blockchains. There are some special gates that they are making availability of sending transactions from the permissioned blockchains to the public ones, and even now in Catapult, in test version of Catapult, there are some ways of sending atomic swaps between the different blockchains. So do you think that this feature would make it like more interesting for the companies? Because I think most of the companies not even starting public blockchain. As far as I asked many ICOs, many companies that are working on NEM, they are using NEM public blockchain just to launch a token sale, just to release the token, and most of the logic is still on the permissioned private blockchains in their companies and in their proof of concept networks with their clients. And what do you think about this way of solving the privacy problem?
Okay, so private blockchains allows a certain enterprise to have internal operations like private, but once you go transact with any other companies, you are going to use a NEM public blockchain. And in this case, all the information about transaction information between different enterprises are open for everyone to see. So if you are a company X buying something from company Y, everyone can see on the public blockchain that company X, using its known address, has paid company Y this amount of money for this service or whatever. So this doesn't actually solve the privacy issue at all, because still the enterprise information, it doesn't have any kind of privacy protected. Like everyone can check the open public blockchain and conclude the information that company X has dealt with companies Y and Z and whatever, and build a chart or a map of all the all the transactions between different enterprises. That's why I'm telling you, like, or we think that like NEM or any other actually protocol that will allow business needs to have at least some optional built-in privacy, some confidential transaction capability that will allow people to anonymize what are the other party of the transaction, how much money was sent in this transaction, and that stuff. This will be very crucial for enterprises to really adopt blockchain between enterprises. That's my point.
Okay, got the point. So,
Yeah.
a lot of questions in this topic because I personally work in the anti-money laundering company that is creating solutions for the blockchains and helping track the illicit activity on the blockchain. So that's why I've got maybe another.
Yeah, I agree with you, by the way. We got this philosophy, by the way, but the world is changing, and the laws are changing right now. So that's why I'm telling you, it's like it's not a personal opinion. It's like a global movement toward the privacy and the protection of privacy. And I think everyone is hustling, trying to get these features implemented on their protocol.
Okay, thanks. I think one of the last points, you compared NEM to other platforms in terms of the ICOs. For example, you've written that Waves has many more ICOs than NEM had in the 2017. So I'm also keeping track of this sphere because I'm doing some kind of private data on that, trying to put it somewhere to write article about that later on. Basically, I compared the market caps of the projects at the moment when they went online, so just after the ICO, and on Waves, even I found it on the Waves development sheets. They basically had $150 million gathered in 2017, just after the ICO period, and on NEM it was around 250. According to my calculations, with like Comsa having almost $100 million of funds gathered, and only many other projects like Dimcoin, Ecobit, Bankera in some part. How can you relate to the quality versus quantity? Because I know it's much easier to create a token on Waves. I recently even created a video stating that there is almost 14,000 tokens on the Waves, but the quality of those tokens, they are mostly either personal tokens or some kind of airdrops. But at NEM we've got like a little bit more than 1,000 tokens, and I think that the market cap of all the ICOs, all the businesses that are running on them is a little bit bigger. So how can you compare the quality versus quantity?
That's a very good question, actually. Actually, we have also looked, in addition to the number of projects used by each protocol, we have also thought about the market cap, or the size of the project, or the amount of money raised. And here we don't care about the small projects, because you can go to NEM and Wave and create a personal mosaic that is not going to count anyway. So, but like we are comparing the actual projects, the public projects that are trying to deliver a product. So, and while we have compared the ICO or the market cap of each project, actually, yeah, they are comparable. Even if like NEM has a slight advantage in the amount of market cap, they are comparable. They are same order of magnitude. But the interesting thing here is that the other platforms like Waves and Neo and other platforms are actually gaining more traction. NEM has been around for 3 years now, and that's by logic will allow them to have more projects. But like the other projects are much younger. They are like maybe 2 years or 1 year younger than NEM, but they have succeeded to attract more developers. More developers are inclined to use this other platform other than NEM. And with this trajectory, this will pose a threat on NEM. Because currently, if you look into the NEM economic activity, which we assign a specific section to discuss that, you find that NEM after 3 years of its existence, only process about 2 transactions per block, which means that you have only like very few rewards, very few fees on the network, which making harvesting not profitable. So many people will not be inclined to secure the network or run full nodes or super nodes. So that will be a problem if you can't attract developers to use your blockchain and make really interesting projects. This economic activity will not increase, and this will eventually affect the stability of your network. So here we are comparing trajectories and slopes. We are not comparing just a fixed number of projects. NEM has very good, reasonable number of projects, about 30. Some of them look interesting and may get adoption, but the trajectory indicates that other projects, younger projects, are attracting more developers, we're attracting more interesting projects, and even with the inception of new projects, which has even more features than like Neo and Waves and NEM, many projects will be inclined to use a newer protocol. So the thing here is that is discontinuity of protocol development in NEM has hurted the protocol pretty much. Many developers see that we are not going to use NEM because the developing activity is not consistent. Like there have been a couple of years without much development activity on the public blockchain side. That's hurting for the project, and that's why people or developers decided to go to other platforms to use that. So here we are not just comparing this. Today we have this number and we have this number, but we are comparing the tendency. We're comparing the trend line, and we saw that if this trend line continues, this will be an existential threat for NEM in general.
Yeah.
And by the way, I have seen your Waves video, and it's a pretty useful. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's good point. But also in this blockchain sphere, we can see that one project can change pretty much. So, for example, now we've got a few projects like LoyalCoin and Proxima X. They are gaining a lot of traction, a lot of businesses. I think those guys looked at the mistakes of the procedures, the other projects that started that went operating in the middle of 2017 and earlier, and now they are fixing those mistakes. They are creating pretty good communities, building on top of that. Also, I think if the Petro will really start its operation on NEM, and everyone is telling us that Petro will, basically they copied the Nano wallet, which is the NEM wallet. They started creating mosaics on the NEM platform. For example, if this coin will start on NEM, basically we would gain a traction during the one day, even exceeding the current capability of the network. So I think one project can change a lot, and it's not really speaking about the maturity of the blockchain, because now we see the NEM is pretty mature. A lot of people really use it. Even there are people that are creating companies that aren't ICOs. They are just using it to blockchainize their services. So yeah, I agree with you that other platforms are getting more attention because they are younger, but I think maturity of NEM also counts as some kind of pro in terms of being a good blockchain. So to end this video, what are your uptakes on NEM? What do you especially like about this platform? Because there should be something, as your written report, as the first report about this platform. What are your uptakes? What do you think NEM will become in, I don't know, maybe 1 year? What do you think about its future? Because you spend a lot of time creating this report. It's a very extensive one. What have you learned? What can you say to our community, to the NEM community about this project? Some positives.
Yeah, so NEM was a promising idea back in 2014, 2015. They're the ones that first introduced the POI system, and there was a lot of great things that they did in the beginning, but we feel that the focus at the NEM Foundation has turned a little bit on doing other things like focusing on the enterprise blockchain. We feel that if the NEM Foundation focused more on the public blockchain, focused on the community a bit more and the developers, we could see a thriving ecosystem with NEM. Tony, I know you mentioned in your last video that the NEM Foundation should maybe read our report or discuss with us a little bit more in detail as far as what we feel that could help them incentivize the NEM ecosystem.
Yes, because you are like outside
Yeah.
force that basically audited the blockchain, and I thought that NEM Foundation should like connect with you like I did and speak with you about the problems and maybe possible answers. So because as I said, you basically created free audit for the NEM platform like outsiders. So yeah, that was my that was my thought about that.
Totally, and we agree with you. I mean, look, we're not here to bash cryptocurrencies. We think that NEM, given the guidance that we have and the information insight that we have, could become good, right? I think our reports are really to help different cryptocurrencies and different companies out from a different perspective, and help them grow if they need to grow, and move on to a better direction. We've actually reached out to the NEM Foundation, and they did not give us any feedback. So, Tony, I would say if you can get the NEM Foundation to speak with us, we'd love to do another podcast, more focus around how do we incentivize the NEM ecosystem, the developers, and really focus on what other things that we see that could that could shine light to some of the things that the developers would look for in the future.
Nice, yeah. It's arrangeable.
If I'm going to add something, actually, like one of the positives about NEM is that the amount of believers you have in the community. Like during my interactions on Twitter and like other social media interactions, I found that the community has so many good people who believe in the future of NEM, and actually, the NEM Foundation have to capitalize on that. It has to continue working with the community, keep listening to the community, keep listening to criticism in general. But as Imran said, the NEM Foundation is maybe distracted or having shifted their focus into the other direction, and this is not really helping the open blockchain or the public project. So we think the NEM Foundation has to listen to criticism, either it's our criticism or others, because many fans of NEM are really believing in the project and they are willing to help. So but no one is listening to them. That is a major point, and so that is one of the positives about the community, and one of many positives actually. So I think the foundation has to act on that.
Yep.
Okay, so thank you guys for putting your time into this interview, for sharing with our community, with NEM community, with cryptocurrency community at many platforms, because we've got a lot of people who are watching those videos. So thank you very much for doing that. Thank you for your report. Probably I will get back to you with some kind of more detailed information from the developers about maybe you can amend few small things in your report, because we found some technical discrepancies in the very high layer of this platform. So thank you very much for doing that. Thank you for focusing on the NEM, and yeah, thank you guys for watching this video. So I will be tomorrow with the another NEM Block Time news, and see you tomorrow. Bye.